Okay, so hi everybody, and welcome to the final in our four-part series designed to help clubs upskill and support them going for the BI Club Mark. The Club Mark program is designed by Basketball Ireland development officers to help clubs ensure they're following best practice and are sustainable. You can find out more about the Club Mark by going to the Basketball Ireland website and clicking onto the Club Mark section along the banner, or you can contact me directly at pcar@basketballireland.ie. Just for anyone watching us on our social media channels, we have done 3 other webinars which are under the Club Mark section of the website. So we have use of social media, we have building a player pathway within your club, and we have safeguarding and coach licensing for your club. Just for rules for everybody on the call, if you can stay muted for the entirety of the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box and I will get to them at the end and I'll ask Connor directly. At the end, if you want to unmute and ask a question directly, please use the reaction button to put up something in your toolbox like so, and I'll ask you directly to unmute so you can ask your question. So today's presentation is on securing sponsorship and applying for grants. So Connor Meaney is our presenter today. He is the commercial manager for Basketball Ireland, and he is responsible for managing sponsorships with companies like Hula Hoops, Kappa and Pinergy. He also works directly with a number of grant funders in Ireland and internationally, so he knows a lot about the grant application process. So I'm going to hand over to Connor now for the presentation.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get started. Hi, everybody. So, as Paul mentioned, I am the commercial manager for Basketball Ireland. I've been there for about 3.5 years. I have a bit of experience before that working on behalf of, working for a number of different sponsors at different levels. I also I guess that's at one level, but I've also I'm from UCD Marion Basketball Club, as most some of you might know. So I work a little bit with the club, not that much, but I know a lot of the challenges that are there for clubs. It's not an easy space to operate in, but yet it is something that, if you can get it right, can add a lot to your club. So I'm going to focus, the majority of the time is going to be on sponsorship. I'll do a little bit of grant applications just at the end. It's probably a talk in itself at some point, and I know Paul will have more information coming soon as well when some of the grant rounds open up in the next couple of weeks. I'll try and keep it as close to 30 minutes as possible, because I know that you'll probably get more value from the questions that you're going to ask. I'm just going to approach it in a certain way, and I'm sure you guys will have lots of questions, so I'll be happy to kind of address them. So the outline of what I'm going to go through is getting your club ready in terms of before you ever even approach sponsors, looking at the differences between sponsorship and CSR and kind of where your club likely will fall within that space. Looking at why should a business support you and making that case, a little bit around just how to pitch and actually contact companies, not too much on that though, and then we'll finish out with grant applications. So we'll start with sponsorship. In terms of getting your club ready, so the first point is, I guess, a little bit of a downer, but it's something that it's important for people to realize in this space. It is a challenging space, getting people to sponsor basketball in general, and there's 2 elements to not everybody sharing your passion. The first, unfortunately, is around basketball. So everyone on this call and everyone who's going to be watching it knows the value that basketball can deliver in the local community and everything else. The game is fantastic, and there's a huge amount of positivity that's generated through the sport. But unfortunately, not everybody in Ireland shares that passion for the sport, and a lot of people don't know enough about it. So a lot of the people who are marketing managers, I certainly find this in my day-to-day job, is that a lot of people may have played basketball when they're in school, but haven't really interacted with the sport much beyond that. So when you are going out to talk to people, it's just important that you don't assume that people share your passion for what basketball is able to do in the community. The other part of it is around your own clubs. So I know that if I was to talk to you about what my own club do, I would be able to say all the amazing things and all the reasons that people should support us. And all the hard work that's done on the ground by our volunteers and everything else that we're doing. But you have to take it that the companies that you're going to be approaching are in a space where everybody who contacts them are going to have a fantastic story in the same space. So everyone's going to be passionate about the work that they're doing, whether it's in their sports club or their community kind of organization. So it's almost that the passion part of it is almost a given, and that's just the basis that you should be building everything on beyond that. So just take it from just being able to take the emotional part out of it and kind of focus on the more practical parts for businesses, I think is a really important point. So when you're getting your club ready, I think the first thing to consider is the overall presentation of your club. So it's helpful to take an outsider's look at how you present yourself currently. So that's the easiest way to look at it, is looking at through your kind of your website, your social media profiles, and kind of going, what are you communicating to people on the outside, exactly what your club's doing, all the good work that you're doing. So the kind of example that I often give to people is that if I turned around and said to you that there's a sponsor who's just opened up an opportunity that there's $5,000 available to a basketball club in Ireland, and they're going to make the decision purely based on the social media activity of the club over the next month. Are you going to significantly change? Would you significantly change the activity that you would do from what you're currently doing to try and make yourself look more positively over the next month? You probably will. Most people will probably would say yes. And that would mean to me is that you're not fully optimizing everything that you're able to do on your social media profiles and your website to give yourself the best platform to show yourself to potential sponsors. So take a look at your website. Is it updated regularly? Take a look at your social media profiles. Is it just text-based? Is there lots of imagery? Is there good videos? I know Nathaniel did a social media piece during the week, so it's worth taking a look at it and seeing, can you improve things a little bit better from what they currently might be? And beyond that, are you really showing people all the great stuff that is happening within your club? So that's a really big thing to look at. And I would say to get more than one opinion. So oftentimes, I know that in a lot of clubs, the same people who are probably the ones who are trying to get a sponsorship are the same people who are doing table officiating at the weekend, and they might be the same people who are sitting on the committee, and there's a lot of jobs to happen. So when you're really close to some things, it can be very difficult to look at. So get someone who doesn't know basketball, who doesn't share that passion, to take a look at what your club are doing and try and get them to give you a bit of feedback on what it is that you're portraying to the public that your club are doing. I think it's really important that you kind of say that this is your digital shop window, and are you currently happy with what it's showing for you? The other thing is what resources are available to you. So I know that one of the challenges for a lot of clubs is that, look, it can be difficult to update the website, update social media profiles, constantly have different content available. Even the basics of having like a decent club logo or having like the correct header images and things on social media pages can be quite challenging. So I would say to reach out within your club, it's a job that doesn't require any basketball knowledge, and most clubs will have someone with a little bit of marketing experience within their club. So reach out and see if you can get someone to just give an hour or two just to do the basics to really get the presentation right. The other part of it is that for a lot of clubs, obviously the age profile in Irish basketball is quite young, so it's tap into that. Most of the clubs will have older teenagers who've been involved in the sport for a while, and they're all way more social media literate than we are probably, and certainly for the older people who are on the call. So tap into that group and try and work with them to kind of improve the way that you're presenting yourself, but also make sure that you have the message, the core message that your club really wants to show of yourself. So I think that's quite important. The second part of it is more of a, I guess, a data point, and it's when people say data, people kind of glaze their eyes over a little bit. But the big part of it that you need to determine is who is your club community. So I think what happens a lot of times is that people undersell themselves in this space. So I've seen a lot, and I know that it happens from my own club from time to time as well, is that when we say, we're trying to promote a picture of ourselves, we often say, oh, we have, it doesn't really matter, 200 members. But you're completely underselling what you are as a community, and you have to realize that everyone that you're competing against is going to be way more ambitious than you are in that space. It's not just the members and the coaches that you have in your community. So if you have a lot of young members, you have to take into account the families that they have, that you have reach into a lot of households that are beyond just having one player on an under 12 team. You also, a lot of the clubs that are on this, I've seen one or two of the clubs that are here, and I know that you have coaches who are out coaching in the community in your local schools. That's additional reach that your club has. So you have to start picking together all these different parts to give a more thorough picture of exactly who your club community are. There's people who used to play for your club who might only follow you on social media or might support fundraisers, yet you're in contact with them and you're able to kind of turn to them. Again, you got to include them all. At the moment, we probably give too shallow a view of who we are and who our clubs are. So that's a really important thing, is to start building that out to give you a kind of a bigger reach. Now, you're not just trying to get one magic number that's your big number of, we have X number of people who are engaged with us. Where you can give lots of different groups that you're able to say, look, we engage with people in different areas. And we have 200 here, and we also engage with a couple of hundred kids through the schools and so on. So you can build that out. When you do start to get a picture of who are the numbers that you have, you need to start then also going, what do you know about them? So you need to start moving into a space where you're speaking the same language that businesses are speaking. So at the moment, again, saying for a typical club, if they said, look, we have 200 members, and that includes 50 kids in our academy, we have 3 senior teams, 2 men's and a women's team, and then we have X other teams underage. That's not the language that any business is speaking. So you need to kind of just change the way that you're addressing that. So it's more a case of, we have 200 members and 60% of them are under 18s. So you're accessing their families. We have a 50-50 gender split. So this is the amount of girls and boys that we're working with. If you know anything about the kind of demographic profile of any of the people, so if you have like basketball traditionally was quite middle class, but it's changing a lot now. There's lots of different areas and different types of areas that are pulling in players from all sorts of different backgrounds. The more you know, the more you're able to go and talk to a company based on that, because if you have people from like a lower income disadvantaged background, it has one implication when you're talking to a sponsor. It can still be a very positive implication, but it also might be a very different conversation than somebody who's from a more middle class background. And it's just something that you should take into account when you're starting to build out the profile of who your members are. The other part of it is just, if you have any geographic knowledge of your members. So for example, I know that some clubs will be able to say that 70% of their members are within 3 kilometers of their gym, or whatever it might be. You need to almost go out and talk to your members a little bit more and try and gather a little bit of information, so that when you are talking to a company, that the more information and a better picture that you can paint for them, the more chance that you're going to have of success. And in terms of how do you talk to them, that's more about how do you talk to your community. So nowadays, there's so many different avenues for conversations to happen. There's club apps, there's WhatsApp, there's obviously social media, your website, you might have an e-zine or an email list. All of these things are important, and I think people discount a lot of them from time to time. So make sure that you build out a fuller picture of where are all these people that you have a connection to, whether it's your like retired members, your active members, any of them. Get that picture of how do you talk to them and where are you talking to them, because you have to bear in mind that a lot of businesses, one of the things that they're going to want to do is use you as a vehicle to get their message to your members. So the more comprehensive your kind of communication channels are, the more chance that you're going to have success. The last one, just in terms of getting your club ready, is the governance basics. So you could do a lot of really good work and get yourself to almost convincing a business to get involved. And when they're doing the last bit of checks, it can all fall apart. And it's as simple as, if you try and send a bank account that isn't a club bank account and you have a personal address, businesses aren't going to, they're not going to give you money. In the same way, if there's any doubts around how the money will be used, and if a club doesn't have proper accounts that are available, again, any doubt will just give a reason to a business not to support you. So you're trying to take away any of those doubts. So make sure that if it's on your club site and different things, have your club committees out there, show all the basics, just so that, if, again, using it as a digital shop window, that if anybody does interact with your site or your social, that they kind of get the picture that this is a club who are well organized, are clearly doing something good beyond just basketball, and it's somebody that we'd be comfortable supporting. This is a big one in this overall conversation, and it's something that I think a lot of people, it's kind of a little bit taken the wrong way, and sponsorship versus CSR. I think people should try and understand as much as possible what you're actually going and looking for. So everyone says sponsorship, but oftentimes it's not sponsorship that you're ever actually looking for. And when there's a slightly different conversation around sponsorship and CSR, and understanding the differences between them will help set yourself up. So sponsorship is more based on like a business decision that leads to a return on investment for a company. So it's often through their marketing department, where it's in place of either advertising, other promotional kind of channels, and they're trying to get, more than likely, reach through awareness, reach, or else being able to drive people to buy. It's going to be very difficult for the vast majority of basketball clubs to be able to deliver on sponsorship. The reason being is that if you take into account that very few clubs have their own facilities that they're able to advertise in, streaming levels aren't that high outside of maybe the top kind of couple of Super League or National League clubs. So it gets to be quite difficult. People, you might be thinking, well, like we have, like we can put logos on the front of our jersey, and that's generally talked about as sponsorship. And that is part of sponsorship, but when it comes to like basketball, it tends to be more along the lines of a thank you within CSR. So your local butchers is not expecting that if they have their logo on the under 13s jersey that it's going to drive huge sales. They're doing it for other reasons, and that's the CSR element. So corporate social responsibility, a lot of companies have budget for it that oftentimes it falls outside of their marketing department. It can sometimes overlap, but it's an attempt by companies to act positively, basically, within their local community. They're trying to do so either to support the local workers who are working for them. They want to be seen positively by the people who live around their business, or they're trying to build sales kind of over a longer term, where they're seen to be a company that acts ethically and does a lot of positive things. So the CSR space is a really interesting one because it has a lot of opportunities for basketball and for smaller sports, but the challenge with it is that you're now no longer just competing against other sports, you're kind of competing against charities and other community organizations. So it's quite a crowded space. So it's one that requires a little bit of thinking of how do you stand out. If you're trying to figure out, okay, is it sponsorship or CSR that we're doing here, you need to kind of take a little bit of an audit of your own club and say, look, do we have sponsorship assets? So again, outside of kind of National League and Super League, there aren't going to be many clubs who have really valuable sponsorship assets. Even our top clubs, only a few of them have valuable sponsorship assets. They tend to get support more through CSR. So you're looking at things like, if you are streaming games, what is the kind of viewership? Is it at a pretty high level? If you have games and there's crowds coming to it, are you able to kind of have weekly like decent attendance figures that you're able to build out? And if you are able to get into it and you're able to stand over a lot of the figures, then it's a slightly different conversation than what we're going to go through for the rest of it. but the principles of what we're going to discuss over the next couple of slides also kind of follow through. It's just to beware that when you're presenting it to companies, it tends to be more you're leaning towards the CSR side and thinking of it that you're trying to achieve that goal rather than a kind of a simple marketing goal. When you're approaching this in general, one of the big things is that clubs need to know what their story is. So if I asked people, like, who are you? A lot of people will tell us, okay, well, we were founded in 1972. We have 150 members. We play in the boys and girls leagues in whatever county. We've won 3 league titles in the last couple of years, and our numbers are growing, which are all really good things and really positive, all part of who you are overall. But it's not really the story that a business is going to really get behind. Companies spend money for a reason, and we need to start looking at it's not just bringing in money because we're passionate about something positive that we're doing. It's more turning it on its head and saying, what problem can we help solve for the companies? So the big issue that most companies have at the moment is because of the growth of social media and digital channels, they have to talk a lot. And a lot of companies don't have much to say. That's the basis of a lot of what goes on in social media at the moment, is that they may have their advertising messages that go out. They may have some things about their employees that go out from time to time because they're trying to show that they're a good employer. But beyond that, they want to stay top of people's minds, and they also want to tell people how great they are, but they can't continuously do that themselves. So rather than them saying every couple of weeks, oh, we're really great, like support us, what you're trying to do is by using CSR, they're able to kind of say, we're backing these other people to be great, and by proxy, we're also very good. That's the ultimate that's happening at the moment. So content is king, and basketball lends itself to social media content in particular. So it's really looking at how are you going to be able to tell your story and go beyond just being a basketball club. So I'll talk about what that is in a minute. And it just goes back to this overall thing of your own presentation of your club is you really need to start looking at, are we communicating what we're doing well to people at the moment? If we aren't, how can we improve getting that story across to people? Because at the moment, I'd say the vast majority of clubs are having to rely on personal contacts and occasionally almost going hand in hand to local companies and saying, look, we really need to dig out. Whereas we're trying to move to the place where even if it's in CSR, that you're able to really tell a good story and say, look, we're able to deliver a lot of value to you, so that year on year, you're going to be able to bring in lots of different partners. So what is your story? Why do you deserve support? So going back to the idea of your club being, well, we have 200 members and we have 10 teams and we've won 3 cups. The big question I'd ask is, or I'd tell you to do is, ask the uncomfortable one of so what? So every time you get into it, just ask so what? So we have 200 members, so what? It's like, okay, well, 60% of our members are under 18, so what? Okay, well, we're providing a really valuable service to teenagers in the country, so what? Okay, if they weren't doing this at the moment, they could be out of the street corners at night just doing nothing, so what? If they're out in the street corners at night doing nothing, they're causing issues in the local community and it affects all of us. Okay, so what? It's like, okay, well, through our work, we're able to start developing strong young community leaders through our sport, and that helps everybody in the community. And they're kind of going, okay, that makes sense. So now you've moved from a space where you're just saying we have 200 people playing basketball to a space where you're saying we're actually contributing to the importance of the community to everybody here, and that we're helping you indirectly anyway. So you're giving back to something that is helping you in the long run anyway. Once you get to that space of being able to tell your story in that sense and switching it to a different way of telling it, all of a sudden the conversation becomes a lot more interesting, because the big thing that a lot of basketball clubs have going for them is that they have a lot of young people. That is the biggest thing that basketball as a sport has going for it. So we really need to be able to say, okay, how are we able to channel the positivity that these young people have into something that makes businesses want to work with us? And that's kind of the thing here. So what makes you special? For a lot of basketball clubs, the kind of three things within basketball that really sets people apart at the moment. One is that it's a young, vibrant sport. Two is that it's kind of got gender equality, and three is that it appeals to all sorts of backgrounds, from particularly from people who might be new Irish or come to the country in recent years, because it's far more accommodating a sport than some of the other traditional sports in Ireland, because a lot of people who've come into the country have a background in basketball. All of a sudden now you're positioning yourself as, okay, well, we're providing a really important local service in the community to young people. But on top of that, we're probably even speaking to young people that aren't being hit by some of the other community groups that are more traditional community groups. So you're all of a sudden separating yourself and creating out a niche that you're able to start getting into a space where when you're talking to companies, you're separating yourself from the pile that there may be 30 or 40 different organizations saying, look, we need your support. And anything that can separate you out from that pile is really positive. So you want to be able to say, look, we're not just saying that we're a basketball club. If you support us, it's doing all these other things that are the really valuable things. In terms of, this is the tricky one for a lot of people. It's kind of prospecting and how do you figure out who to even go to and talk to? So the first one's the obvious one of, look, you need to look within your own club community. Are there people that are connected, are working organizations that may sponsor? And that is always going to be the first port of call for any club, and it's definitely something that you should look into. Local Chamber of Commerce is the obvious one of, you'll be able to see any of the local businesses that, and they tend to have contact details. So getting to know people within that is a really good space to get yourself on the radar of people. Other local clubs is a really interesting one. So for example, GAA clubs, football clubs, look at who's sponsoring them. And it's not just the Sherry Fitzgerald is sponsoring the local GAA club, and we should contact Sherry Fitzgerald. That's not really the way, because they're going to have an easy out to tell you, no, we're already sponsoring the GAA club, leave us alone. What you should do is look at who's sponsoring the GAA club and go to their competitors and say, look, take another real estate agent and say, look, Sherry Fitzgerald are sponsoring the GAA club. We have access to all these teenagers and families in this other kind of area. How about we work together to try and offset some of the work that they're doing? And again, you're finding yourself into an interesting space. Multinational companies is a big one. So one of the big misconceptions about sponsorship in Ireland and basketball is that basketball has this American kind of background, and it should be easy to get big American companies to sponsor basketball. It's very difficult to do that, and the reason being is that a lot of those companies, one is that they're excellent gatekeepers, so they don't let people get that easily to them to make those sort of pitches. But the bigger thing is that they tend to work really closely in their local community, and a lot of the tech companies in particular try and link into tech related programs. So it's just take a look. If there is a big company in your area, look at what they have. They oftentimes will have kind of CSR funds that will tell you exactly what they're looking for, and sometimes they'll have grant funding, which I'll come back to. So it is worth taking a look, but just to know that it's not that simple to say that Amazon generates billions and they're in Ireland, so they should spend money on basketball. It unfortunately doesn't work that way. And then the other one, when you're looking at, regardless of what company that you're looking at, it's just, have you got the right audience for them? So this is, my mother plays bridge in the local bridge club, and it's sponsored by Massey's, the funeral directors, and it's my favorite sponsorship because it's absolutely brilliant, because it's And it's not the only bridge competition that has this. A lot of the bridge competitions are sponsored by funeral directors, and they know exactly that the demographic who are playing bridge are the likely future customers that are going to be with the funeral directors. And it's flippant and everything else, but it actually makes perfect sense. And so for a basketball club, it's obviously not that same space, but you need to kind of go into it of, okay, well, who do we have access to, and what like who are the companies that are selling to those same people? So again, it's going to be young families are going to tend to be the basketball audience more so than any other, because of the demographics of basketball. So who are the kind of the companies in your area or wherever that are targeting young families and trying to sell? Additionally, particularly for companies who are focused on positive and healthy lifestyles. If you have a company that's in your area, you know they're trying to do something positive and healthy for families, all of a sudden you're getting into a really interesting space where you can really make an interesting kind of push to those sort of companies. But when you do make that push, it's really important to go back to the previous point of, you're not just a basketball club, it's what else can you deliver. When you're getting to the stage where you're actually going to go out, so I've included pitch here, just I actually mean both trying to get in contact with companies and also if you do get in front of them. So the big thing is work on your presentation. So go back to that principle of, what are we beyond just having the under 13 league champions or having the opportunity to have a logo on the front of our jersey? What is the story that we're trying to tell as a club, and are you getting that across in your presentation? Look at tools like I know, I'm sure Nathaniel mentioned Canva the other day. It's a really easy free tool that helps you put together presentations, a really visual presentations, lots of photography and different things. So give a good sense of who your club is through your presentation. If you have members in your club who have a decent camera, try get some good photography. The more that can bring your story to life, the better, because a lot of these people, again, won't have interacted with basketball clubs and won't have seen exactly what you're doing. So the more that you can show them, the more that you're likely to be able to bring them along on the journey that you're trying to bring them on. And the video, obviously, it's far more engaging. If you can have a decent level video that really shows who you are. I think one of the videos that stands out to me in that space is Dundalk Ravens last year had a video that was about 1.5 minutes long. And all it was that they had the kids in the club from all the different backgrounds and all the different languages that they spoke, and they all kind of talked about what the club meant to them in their own language. And it's absolutely perfect because it says everything that you need to know about what they're trying to do as a club and being an inclusive kind of organization for people from different backgrounds. And it's short, it's compelling, it automatically gets people kind of going, okay, I want to know more. So if it's possible, look to see what sort of video that you're able to do. Speak to someone directly. It's an obvious point, but it's what I mean by this is sending off cold emails and just hoping that someone's going to get back to you and open a door to have a conversation. It's not going to work. So try and find a way to interact with someone directly, whether it's finding out who's on their marketing team, finding out if they do CSR and if they have a point of contact, calling up the business and asking who the best person to talk to or who to address something to. All of a sudden now, when you send an email or you're contacting them, you're able to say, look, I was already in touch with somebody and they said that you're the best person to talk to. It's more likely that they're going to actually respond to you. When you do get speaking to someone, this is really challenging, particularly, no, it's just really challenging in general, but what I'd say is stick to the message. And that is that when people who are passionate about something are talking about it, they can sometimes get too passionate about it and lose sight of what they're really trying to say. So it goes back to the very original point, was that not everyone shares your passion about your club and basketball. So when when you do get in front of anybody and you're trying to make this case of, we're not just a basketball club, but we're a really valuable volunteer group in the community, make sure you stick to the message and you're not getting caught up with, no, you should sponsor us because we're doing great work. That will not get you over the line. Whereas if you can go down the other route, you have a chance of having success. Another one that's really difficult is being clear on what you're asking for and also outlining what it achieves. So what I mean by that is a lot of people are uncomfortable when it comes to the ask of sponsorship. So whether it's you're asking for €250 for some basketballs, if you're asking for €2,000, whatever it is, make sure you're clear in your own minds what you're asking for and what will help you to achieve. So tell that story. So it's best not to just go in with a blanket, oh, we want $5,000, this would be great because it would make our lives easier and we'll be able to do lots. That's not going to really, it's not a compelling message for anybody, and it's not going to help you. Whereas if you go in with a more specific ask of saying, look, if we were able to get €1,000, it would enable us to achieve X, Y, and Z, which we've been trying to do for the last couple of years, but we haven't been able to do yet. It becomes a compelling message, because going back to the content is king. If a company is able to share that they're helping you achieve that goal or that milestone, it's something that they can positively shout about, and they can also help you. So it's kind of moving into that space. The last one that I have on sponsorship is just the process is ongoing. So I think this is probably the most important one. Don't rush. So oftentimes when sponsorship comes up, I know the sponsorship tends to come up either in August before a season starts, or around kind of March, when they're kind of going, oh God, we have a little bit of a deficit from the previous year. We have to figure out a way to generate more money for next year. Don't rush this. Take your time to get the basics right of getting your story right of who you are in the community, what you're doing, making sure that that's actually shown to people on social media, on your website, when people are interacting with you on a day-to-day basis in your facility, when you're actually running the club. Make sure you get those basics right, so because you never know who's going to be walking in through the door, who might open a door for future opportunities for you. So and also, if you rush it, oftentimes there may be someone in your local community who would be ideal for this. But if you rush into it too fast and go before being prepared, you might lose that opportunity now, and it may take you a couple of years before you get that opportunity with them again. So I'd say just be patient and try and build it up over time, so that you are ready when you do kind of find a company that you think is right for you, and also you have your story right. This is it kind of feeds into that, is like, can you get on the radar without a direct ask? So what I mean by that is that a lot of clubs probably haven't interacted with their local businesses very much to date. And if your first interaction with them is an email saying, we would like you to sponsor us, all that's going to happen is a lot of businesses are going to get a little bit defensive and kind of try and give you excuses as to why they can't do it at the moment, because they don't know anything about you and they're getting asked by a lot of people. So it's their natural kind of thing is to go, we'd rather not. So if you're having something like your club finals day, or you're hosting a big match of or different things, try and interact with your local businesses and get them down to see what you're actually doing. Particularly if you're doing something positive with kind of young groups, or if there's a chance if it's a big enough business, are they able to come down and actually play basketball in your facility on like an open day or anything else? If you can get people in the door to see what you're doing, all of a sudden it takes them along on that journey of the passion part that you already have, because they're seeing exactly what you're doing, and you're not having to convince them that you're doing amazing stuff only through video and photography. They actually get to experience it, and then they have a much greater chance of kind of believing in it. So if there's any way to interact, maybe it's a local social league between the local businesses. It might be a 3-on-3 social league, or a shooting competition where they only need one person from their company to take part. Or maybe it's going and flipping it in the other direction and saying, okay, well, we want to work with these people in the future, but we already know that currently they're working with tidy towns, or they're doing something else. How about you actually use your young people that are in the club and go to them initially and say, look, we know you're already doing this. Can we work with you on it? And we'll put like the power of our our membership behind it. So then all of a sudden in 9 months' time, when you're actually trying to make your pitch to them, you're not new to them. They know who you are, and they know that you've already worked with them. And again, you're just cultivating that relationship. The timing might not be right now. So the easiest answer for nearly every business when it comes to sponsorship or CSO or anything in that space is that, we've already used up our budget this year. We've already supporting a couple of different things. The time's just not right for us. We were really interested in what you were doing, but look, we're sorry, and best of luck. that it seems like it's a door slamming in your face and you're getting disappointed by it, but actually it's a really good opportunity for you. That what the best thing to do is to kind of go, okay, well, we completely understand, best of luck with everything that you're doing, but when what time of the year do you make your budget decisions? And we'd like to keep you informed of what we're doing. So then all of a sudden it's very difficult for them to tell you, look, we're not going to tell you when we're making those decisions, and we don't want to hear about it from you again. So they're going to tend to, most companies will give you a little bit more information. All it allows then is that a couple of months later, when it's getting to their actual budget decision times, that you're able to have been in contact with them and say, look, you weren't able to support us last year when we were doing this, but here's what happened with the program that we were talking about doing, and here's what we're hoping to do for next year. Hopefully you'll be able to support us this year. And it becomes a lot more difficult for them to shut the door without ever hearing from you. Unfortunately, some will, but it becomes more difficult, and that's really what you're trying to do. The last one there is be gracious to those who do support you. So I don't want that to be taken into of like we're charities and that people, anyone who gives us money, we should just say thank you, thank you, thank you, and that be the end of it. But if someone does support you, make sure that you do the little things to make sure that they're recognized, whether that's the individual who introduced you to the company, whether it's the company themselves. It doesn't have to be a big framed jersey of the club that's going to cost you €150 and all of a sudden you've eaten into a big portion of the money they've given you. But invite them down to your club awards, invite them down to the big match, whatever it might be. Do the little gestures that keeps them informed of everything that you're doing. Even if you overdo it, they're not going to be bothered by that. But if people support you and they never hear about it again until next year when they're asking you for support again, you're never going to have that. And if you think about all the hard work that we've just been talking about in order to get on people's radar and actually convince them that you're someone worth supporting, the last thing you want to do is, after you've convinced someone that after 1 year that you've kind of taken it for granted and you've lost them and you're having to start the process again. So really, when you do find someone, whether it's a company, a club contact, or any other way, make sure that you acknowledge them. And one of the things that I think it can be a little bit better in that space is also within your own club membership. If someone introduces you to a company, they may not be the correct person who actually delivers the sponsorship, but if they've introduced you and they've kind of put themselves out there for the club, make sure you recognize that person as well, because it is really important. And the last thing that people want people to go through as a club is almost this rotation of every couple of years, oh, I'm the person who has to ask my business to give us money, and they'll give me the money and tell me where to go, and I'll be back in 5 years' time to do it again. What we're trying to get to a point is that if you do go to any business, that you're actually really able to demonstrate to them, look, we have something valuable for you. We're able to do something really positive, and we're going to be able to share that experience with your own people and our own people together. And once you get to that space, then you're going to have a lot more opportunities to actually get some sponsorship. The next area I'm going to just fly through because I'd actually rather get questions from you than anything else. So grant applications is a very different space. So there are, I'll explain some grants that are available in the other side. I only have 2 slides, so it'll be very quick. The big difference in grants is that they have a specific use. So if someone gives you money for it, you have to be able to deliver on what you're promising to deliver. So, for example, one of the some grants in the local area can be for disadvantaged communities, or they might be about disability access to a sport. You have to ensure that if you're applying for a grant, that you're able to deliver what you're actually promising, because if you don't deliver, not only will you can lose the grant money, but it also is a major kind of reputational issue for your own club. So just be wary of that grants aren't always just this easy way of getting money that allows you to improve everything that you're hoping to improve. When you do find grants, again, I'll mention some of them in a moment, but grant applications are, these next 2 points are kind of linked together, and it's going to sound really stupid, but it's something that people get wrong all of the time, is that grant applications can be a tick box exercise at times and give the answers they want. whoever is administering a grant is going to ask for very specific information from you. They're going to want to know what the program you're going to deliver is, how many people it's going to reach, what are the target group that they're trying to reach that you're able to help them to reach. You're not going and telling a story about all the different cool things that you want to do in your club. You're telling a story of what you're going to be able to help the grant funder achieve. And by giving the answers they want, all they're doing is going through the application and saying, because the way it works for a lot of grant applications is when they go through your application, it's literally a first question, has he given what we want? Yes, we'll keep going. And once you fail any of those questions and don't answer in the way that they want and give the information that they're looking for, your grant application is pretty much automatically discounted. And there's a lot of people looking for a small amount of money. So the last point is really, really important when you do look at grants is it's not just what you would like to do, it's how can you deliver what they would like you to do. So they will tell you with any grant, this is what it's trying to achieve and this is what we want from you. Make sure that you keep that in your mind at all times and keep using whatever language that they use. So if they say disadvantaged communities is going to be in nearly every answer. If they say special populations is going to be in nearly every answer. So make sure you just give the answers that they want. Last slide for me is where to look for grants. So first port of call is your local sports partnership. That's unnecessary. So your LSP, there's a lot of supports that are there for everything from volunteer training to small equipment grants, lots of things there. So in general, I think if you don't know who your local sports partnership is already, it's a really valuable resource for you to find out anyway and get in contact with them, because they have a lot of supports, whether it's financial or non-financial, and it's a really valuable thing that you should really try and link into. So that would be the very first thing. Local multinationals. So again, what I said with multinationals before is that a lot of them support their local community and have very targeted funds. So for example, I think Intel and League Slip have where they pay, if a worker for Intel volunteers in a community club, they get paid for their time volunteering in the community club. Lots of things like that exist all over the country. So if you have somebody in your local area, take a look and see if they have a fund available. Things like local Lions clubs. We've had one of our clubs in the outside of Dublin have a lot of success with that, buying equipment for local schools in recent times, so take a look at that. Community gain funds tends to be from if there's major infrastructure developments. So for example, my club operate under the shadow of the new Aviva Stadium, well, new a few years ago. And as part of that development, there's a community fund that is in a 5-kilometer radius of the stadium. Anything like that in your community where there's been a recent new development, what happens is that developers have to, as part of winning the contract, they have to give back to the local community. So try and see if there is any of those local funds, or ask a local councillor about similar. Capital grants, I'm sure some of you might even be on the call for the purpose of capital grants, but we're going to do, I think Paul will tell us afterwards, but I think we're going to do more stuff around capital grants when they come up. Paul had a great talk last year from an expert in capital grants, and I know they're due to come up soon. There's been talk in the last couple of weeks about them. Oscar is the system that you have to get registered on if you're going to be part of them. Basketball, all I'll say on capital grants is that basketball is very, very underrepresented in capital grants, and it's because of a misconception from a lot of basketball clubs in that they think that because they don't own their ground or they don't own their basketball facility, that they're not eligible for capital grant funding. And I just want to really emphasize that that is not true. There are ways to still make yourself eligible for grant funding at a small level and at a higher level. There are set protocols that you have to kind of organize with a long-term kind of a leasing arrangement with the school or whoever you might be, whatever facility you might be using. But what I'd say is we're going to have more information on capital grants, but just when it comes out, have the conversation within your club about them, because too many times people just say, oh, that doesn't apply to us, and they are just closing the door on something that we should be a lot more successful as basketball clubs in Ireland at getting money. The last one is a little bit, it's the most challenging one. There's Erasmus funding, so there's these things called small collaborative partnerships through the EU. This is only really going to apply to if any of the clubs on the call or on the video have really strong connections with clubs or other community groups in other countries within the EU, then this is worth looking up. So what you have to do is you have to set up projects that are, I think it's a minimum of 4 countries working together, and it's designed around shared learning in multiple countries. It's not easy to do, but there's a lot of reward at the end of it, and there's decent financial support from the EU. It tends to need someone who has done a little bit of it before, but there are organizations in Ireland who are getting money through this, and it is something that if you do have really strong connections in other countries, that at least ask them the question, have they ever looked at it before, and maybe it's something that you can look at together. I guess that's a whistle-stop tour of everything. So I don't know how long that took, but
a little bit over the half an hour, but it was very, very good. So thanks for that, Connor. Stop sharing your screen there. And at this point, I'll take any questions. So if anybody has any questions, you can type it into the chat box for now. And then if there's nothing comes in the chat box, then we'll open it up to people to ask. Just one thing I would add in terms of the sports capital grant is we are, as you, Connor, you said that we are doing some more stuff on that coming up, and there is resources on the website already. So that talk was last year in the arena. It's recorded and it's on the Basketball Ireland website under Get Involved, and it is Sports Capital Grant, I think it's called, and you'll see the videos there. So any questions? If there's no questions in the chat box, I'll leave it open. Oh, here we have one. Do clubs need to be registered for tax exemption?
Okay, so this is charitable status, I think that we're talking about. So no, I guess the short answer is no. So charitable status is quite difficult to get set up. There's a lot of protocols that are required for a club to do it. There's a lot of governance required that's above what most clubs have currently at the moment. And on top of that, when you do get charitable status for tax exemptions, that the issue is that you have to have a charitable purpose, and the charitable purpose can be quite limiting in what you're able to spend the money from. So it's something that a lot of clubs have we've looked at before in terms of, like, the ideal would be that if there is charitable status and you were able to have tax exemption, that if people are paying their fees to you, that they'd be able to get some sort of reward for it. But it's not the way that it works in Ireland. The way it works in Ireland is that you have to have a minimum of €250 donation, and that the blended tax rate that someone would have earned on earning that €250 is then given to the community organization. So it's, look, there are rewards to it, but I would just say that it is quite difficult to do, and there aren't a lot of sports clubs to do it. And it's a conversation that was actually on a webinar last week about this very topic, because there's going to be a fresh push, hopefully, for sports organizations to get tax exemptions, because there's I think over the last couple of months, particularly when sport hasn't been available, it's shown just how valuable sport is in a lot of communities. So there's going to be a push to try and get tax exemptions for clubs. So that's a bit long-winded, Brenda, but I would say you don't need to do it. It's worth like looking into it, but it is quite challenging to do.
Perfect. So the next question we have here is, the big funding themes now are girls and women in sport. How can basketball clubs best sell their sport on these criteria?
Yeah, it's a good point, Jim. So there is a lot of funding, and particularly a lot of sponsors are moving into that space. They want to be seen to be supporting women in sport. So there are a couple of, I think the first and most basic thing that I would say is that um, look up the Sport Ireland Women in Sport policy. So they have kind of they have pillars around leadership, kind of coaching and different things. And the more that you can show a company that, look, this is something that we're taking the challenge on ourselves and really trying to progress the sport, the better. The other area, and it's I don't know if Paul, do we email? Can we email everybody afterwards?
Yeah, I can check with Jenny, but anything we can try sort something. Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, I can. Anyone who wants it, they can ask me for it, or you can Google it. But it's there's IOC gender equality guidelines, and there's a set of recommendations that look at how sport should be equal, and it goes everywhere from governance at board level all the way down to portrayal. And portrayal is one that, particularly for clubs that have both men and women, it's something to really pay attention to. That it's there's simple things that happen a lot of time through social media and websites that probably aren't best practice for women's sport in terms of the imagery that's used, the language that's used. For example, despite the fact that like some of the governing bodies, like the ladies Gaelic football union, it's ladies isn't a term that is generally accepted that should be used when promoting women's sport. So just having an understanding of that and understanding the types of imagery that should be used could really help you to really project your club as being equal in that kind of space. So I would say, yeah, look at the Sport Ireland one, look at the IOC's gender equality recommendations, and then just generally, fortunately, basketball is in a space where it has been 50-50 for a long time, and I would really emphasize that message to anyone that you're talking to is that, look, a lot of people are trying to catch up on where basketball has been for a long time, and this is our specialty. So I would really put it, any club that has female players, I would have gender equality and women in sport as one of the like really core themes that you're really trying to get across.
Perfect. Next question is, you mentioned the club address to ensure good governance. Is having the home address of a committee member as the club address good practice?
So it's not ideal, but at the same time, it's not that's not a major issue. So the bigger thing is that you have a club committee and that you kind of, it's shown who the club committee members are. Realistically, a lot of clubs are going to struggle to not have a person's individual address as their post address. Some clubs, what they do is they have a teacher or someone in their club works in the school that they rent from, and that might be an alternate solution for you, but I wouldn't be overly concerned that your club address is there. The only thing about individual details that I'd be really worried about is if you ever get to the stage where, oh, we don't have our proper club bank account, so we're looking to get this paid through John's bank account, and John looks after this. That's where it gets really messy, and so that's the only thing that I'd be really worried about.
Yeah, brilliant. And just to kind of mention, when you're on that governance point, and just in general, some of the stuff Connor mentioned today, you know, like he talked a lot about social media. That video is up there on the website to help you clubs. So the use of social media, things like good governance, that is what the first part of the club mark is getting through that first stage and making sure you have the right documentation and the right governance and best practice. So the documents are there, the videos are there, and anything that isn't there, you can contact me and we'll work on putting something together to help you. So next question, has Basketball Ireland sought sponsorship for summer camps that clubs could run locally, like the GAA Cool Camps?
So this is actually we had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago. It's something that has come up from time to time. When we've talked to clubs, we have been told in the past that they didn't want our involvement in that space, that tends to be, for whatever reason, that it's managed locally. Sometimes it's an individual in a club runs the camp on the club's behalf, and it's kind of separate to the club. But if there's a lot of clubs who are interested in, and we can put out a call to see if we can contact clubs and put out a call for that and see if they would like centralized support for a cool camps model, I'd be very interested in it. And I know that the cool camps model is something that we certainly have looked at, and we've looked at whether we would have centralized payments and then money so that people can pay online in an easier way. We looked at whether we would link in with Kappa directly for camp gear, whether we would provide kind of guidelines, or not guidelines, but options for people from our development officers of what they could teach, and it wouldn't be mandatory, but they'd be able to follow a protocol. We've looked at that, but informally and in the past, we were kind of given the indication from clubs that it wasn't something that they were interested in, but I'd happily open that back out, and if there are people interested in it, it would be something that I'd be interested in.
That's great. Do Basketball Ireland have statistics on the membership demographics and increase in participation that clubs could use in their presentations?
Yeah, so on the Clubmark page, there's a different presentation to this one that just has a little bit more, it's more text-based, and it's kind of, it has a few different parts like that. It has a membership demographics page. I would also happily try and support anyone with a little bit more information around that. The other part is if your club has played in any of our kind of national finals and different things, and sports file have been there, we can get access to some of those photographs to support you, to try and give you a kind of more professional look to your presentations. But the short answer, Martin, is yes, we do have some of that. And also, if you get to a stage where you're kind of like, look, we think we have a really good presentation here, and we think that we're ticking all the boxes, but we want to just sense check it, I'm happy for you to send it to me, and I'll have a quick look through it. I'm not able to, unfortunately, work through everyone's and build it out with you, because unfortunately, we just don't have enough time. But if you've worked on it and you think that it's ready to go, I'd be happy to throw an eye over it and give a different perspective.
Yeah, and that document is, for anyone who's looking for it, is if you go onto the Basketball Ireland website, and as I said, along the banner you'll see Clubmark. That'll take you to the Clubmark section, and that presentation is under the extra resources section of the Clubmark, and you'll see it there. Let me see now, do we have any more questions coming in here? Any plans to continue with the junior MBA, Connor?
Yeah, so I'll take the. I just read Jim's one there, so I'll just touch on the first part as well. That they ran outdoor summer camps during COVID and had huge take up under Fun Hoops umbrella. That's fantastic. It's an area we have a project. I can't go into it at the moment, but we have a project that is going to be very much around outdoor basketball courts and different things that are going to happen that will hopefully be in place by ahead of next summer. We're partnering with Sport Ireland on a new initiative, so hopefully we'll have more things that can fill into that Fun Hoops kind of space, and also have things that clubs themselves can kind of work with it and try and offer things to people. So it's a great initiative. Well done. The junior MBA, yes. So this was supposed to be the third year of junior MBA. We're not sure yet whether it's looking unlikely that it'll happen this year, just because of the issues that are there. But we are continuing to work with them. We have an excellent relationship with the MBA, and we're trying to build it out a little bit stronger and keep that kind of the link between the clubs and the schools is the really important part. There's also, we're examining whether or not we'll potentially look at a junior WNBA, but that's very early stages. So yeah, Jim, it's definitely an area that we want to look at, while also supporting mini basketball, which is doing a lot of good work as well. So it's trying to find a way that junior NBA can introduce new schools to basketball, and then hopefully they can continue on into mini basketball.
Perfect. So at this stage, we don't seem to have any more questions. I'm going to stop recording, and then that'll leave it open if anyone wants to ask a question directly that doesn't want to be on the recording. Just for anybody watching us, just please go to the Club Mark section, check out all our resources there. And if you're looking to apply, email me at pcar@basketballireland.ie. And just in general, if there's anything that you are looking for in terms of club support, you can email me as well. So I'm going to stop recording.